Hello, we're back to Najdorf videos, and in this video we're going to be looking at move h3. So here we have the position with h3, and black has many options here to develop with g6 or with e6. I chose for today e6, g4 and knight fd7. I would like to stop at this moment because I think it's very important. There is a move d5, but I don't like the endgames after that. So I think knight fd7 is a very tricky move. Mostly bishop e7 is played, and after g5, knight fd7, h4. I don't like that white does not develop his bishop on g2 and develops with bishop e3 and queen d2, and black's bishop is already on e7. So what is the idea of knight fd7? The idea of knight fd7 is to save the tempo for bishop e7. For example, if white goes g5, black can play b5. Now b4 is annoying. a3, bishop b7, bishop e3, and not bishop e7 but knight b6. This transposes to our main line, which we're going to be looking at. And I just would like to mention about bishop g2. And after bishop e7, we transpose to Vachier-Lagrave-Anand game or Howell-Carlson, which we'll look later. So knight fd7, bishop e3, b5. Now white has two options, either to develop with bishop g2 or to play a3. Bishop g2 doesn't promise white anything. After bishop b7, castle, we develop with bishop e7, queen d2, a4 here is not dangerous. b4, knight a2. We see that the b4 pawn is under attack, but what about e4 pawn? Knight c5, knight b4, knight e4. I consider this very good for black, so let's get back to move a3, preventing b4. Bishop b7 and g5. So if white wants to play queen d2 instead of g5, we go knight b6 with the idea of knight c4 at some point. g5 and knight b6. There was one game played by Ch06 against Al-Said. Ch06 played queen g4. Interesting move, but I don't think it should be dangerous for black. Knight develops to d7 and castle. It is very interesting here what is white's plan, actually trick. If we play a normal move, for example, rook c8, then white has a trick. g6, hg6, knight e6. And if we take the knight on e6, there is queen g6, and after king e7, bishop g5 is winning for white. So we have to be a bit careful. And that's why I think Alcide in this game chose g6 after castle. But I don't like this move. It weakens dark squares. So I think much better is to play knight e5. Now queen has to go back to g3 and knight ec4. I like this position very much because black does not lose a tempo on bishop e7 and have their own play on queen side. Rook c8, queen c7, and have concrete threats on king. For example, let's continue with f4, rook c8, f5. Bishop c4 here does not change anything. Knight c4, f5, e5. And on knight b3, black still goes queen c7. With many threats like knight b2, knight a3, and queen c3. So f5, e5, knight has to go back, knight e3, queen e3, and a very interesting move, h6. Now black asks white what he wants to do with the g5 pawn. If g takes h6, then we don't take... Okay, actually rook h6 is also nice, but I think stronger is to play g6 with the idea of bishop h6. And if white defends the pawn on g5 with rook g1, then h takes g5 and rook g5 runs into g6 with the idea of bishop h6. And I think black has huge advantage here. So let's get back to knight b6 and queen d2. Well, white develops, so black also develops, not with bishop e7, but with knight d7 with the same plan, rook c8, queen c7. Castle, rook c8. Black doesn't have to hurry for bishop e7. King b1, always useful move to take the king from pin or from c-file. Knight e5. The c4 square is very good for black here. So f4, knight ec4, queen e1. Black again doesn't hurry for bishop e7 and play queen c7. With the same threats, knight a3 or even knight b2. If it was black's move here, knight b2 would be also very strong because king b2 runs into queen c3, and knight a4. So bishop c4, knight c4, and rook d3. I think the best way to protect the c3 knight and any threats on king. But there is a very good move, b4. We attack the c3 knight, and after a b4, the typical breakthrough in Najdorf, d5. White has to take on d5, and after bishop b4, I think it's very complicated position, but black seems to be totally great. this is a very smart line to avoid any big lines with bishop e3 and queen d2. So now let's get back to bishop g2. Bishop e7, bishop e3, knight c6. Here white has two options, queen e2 or queen d2. Queen d2 was played in Howell-Carlson game, but we should mention that after queen d2, the c4 square is very vulnerable, and black even has time to wait for his maneuver and don't rush for knight e5. So I think castle is good for black, and short castle. This should not be dangerous for black. If white castles long, knight d4, bishop d4, and black starts his play on queen side. b5, f4, bishop b7, developing, king b1, and b4. So now knight has to go on e2, and black starts his play on queen side with a5. White starts his play on king side with g5, queen c7, h4, rook fc8. Now if h5, I think a4 is very strong. White cannot take on b4 because the c2 pawn is hanging. So white has to go rook c1, and black has many ideas here. I like the move knight b6. Knight comes to c4 or a4, and I think they are very comfortable here. So queen d2, castle and short castle. Now knight de5, knight wants to jump on c4 square, so b3 controls the c4 square, knight d4, bishop d4, and I like the move what Carlsen made here. Knight g6, controlling dark squares. So bishop e3, I don't think white has time for f4, because there is a little tactic, knight f4, rook f4 and e5. Black takes the dark squared bishop, and we can see that dark squares is very weak for white. So after bishop e3, queen c7, knight e2, b5. Very good position for black. Carlsen won this game very nicely, and you can see the whole game in files with analysis. So queen e2 instead of queen d2. Knight d4, bishop d4, and short castle. There is no need for white to castle short, so white is more ambitious and castles long. b5, e5, and d5. This is a very known structure from French defense, but here we can see that the bishop on g2 is very much misplaced. And black has time to organize the attack on queen side. So if f4, as it was continued with in the game of Vachier Anand, bishop b7, queen e3, rook c8. The same plan, king b1, queen c8, queen c7. Rook c1, because the threat was b4, and bishop c5. It's always very good to exchange this dark squared bishop. After knight e2, a5, c3, and now the bishop on b7, we can see that it is a little bit closed with d5 and b5. So now it found a very good square. Bishop a6. At some point after b4, this bishop will be very dangerous on a6 f1 diagonal. Well, I hope you learned something for this video and it will be helpful in your repertoire. Thank you for watching.